Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Got a quick story here on a new law in Missouri, but this is the kind of thing that actually affects a lot of people across the whole country. It's a problem in all 50 states. It's probably a problem elsewhere, but this is a great example of a law that when it was passed originally had a big loophole in it, a loophole through which you could drive a truck. And they've closed the loophole, but it's still a problem, so we'll talk about this. Gloria Enlow wrote it. Donald sent it to me. Thanks a lot. KJLU, Missouri. New law takes effect this month cracking down on copper theft. Copper theft. The new law, aimed at cracking down on copper and catalytic converter theft, takes effect this month. It's House Bill 69. It closes a loophole in the state law in Missouri regarding the theft of copper and other precious metals. This is a problem across the country where people will break into homes, abandoned homes, or homes that are for sale. I've heard of people going on vacation and coming home and their house was stripped of all the wiring and copper pipes. And of course, many of the houses in Detroit and other big cities that were abandoned during the housing crisis had their plumbing stripped out of them. And so then somebody buys the house, and at one point in time you could buy a house in Detroit for $1. It wasn't worth it because you had to reinstall all the plumbing and all the electrical along with everything else. So Missouri state law required businesses to track purchases of scrap metal or other materials that contained copper. But there was an exemption for purchases of less than $50. So a guy shows up at a scrapyard and he's got an armload of freshly stripped copper pipe. And he goes, I want to sell you this stuff. And the guy goes, well, it's $55 if you give me ID, or it's $49 without. The guy goes, oh, I'll take $49. And yes, that is how it works. That's how economics works. House Bill 69 eliminates that exception and requires all sales to be reported. And now you might say, but Steve, seriously, if I turn in $12 worth of scrap, I should have to give them my ID? Yes. Besides that, the average person isn't going out of their way to turn in $12 worth of scrap. Okay, most of the scrappers are going to be bringing in $50 or more, but if they know that $49 and less is safe, they'll just show up one day and drop off $49 worth. Come back an hour later with another $49 worth. And go down the street, drop off $49 at the other scrapper. There might be more than one scrapper. So you got to close loopholes like this. State Representative Hardy Billington says he's heard of thieves stripping copper wire from vacant homes and causing thousands of dollars in damage. Oh, you've heard of that, have you? It's not just copper wire, it's copper pipe too. And they've had problems in Michigan, I've heard about this, where scrappers will break into things like parts of the electrical grid that have wire in them and somehow turn them off and rip copper out of them and get out of there before the power company can show up and find out what's going on. And so there are people who will steal any kind of metal that they can. Now, copper is often stolen because it's valuable, but in the form of wiring is one thing, but in the form of pipes is another. And that's the one. I actually have heard many stories. There was actually a problem in some cities in Michigan where homes that were for sale would get stripped because somebody would come by, they'd see a for sale sign, they'd come by at night, see the lights were on, and the lights are not on. They'd walk up and they'd case the house, and if somebody came by and said, excuse me, what are you doing? Oh, I'm looking at the house, it's for sale. I'm going to call my realtor tomorrow. Thanks, and they take off. But if they look in the windows, nobody's in there, they come back a little while later, they kick the door down, go inside with sawzalls, chop out all the pipes, and leave. And a realtor comes by to show the house a couple days later, and the place is a mess because all these things were sawed out of the basement. And I spoke to people who had that happen to property they owned. And they had spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to get it fixed. And the copper pipe that was stolen, $50, maybe. So by doing this, then they can track who's been stealing copper and who's been selling it. And if you can't sell it, why break in and steal it? Well, and there's also another problem. Because if somebody breaks into a house and steals all the copper pipe from it, and then sits on it for a couple days, breaks into another house, steals more copper pipe, breaks into a warehouse, steals copper pipe, mixes it all up, and then goes into a scrapper with it, they can't identify the pipe. So it's a big problem. But this is closing an obvious loophole that I assure you was being exploited. The bill also makes the theft of catalytic converters a Class E felony, which sounds bad, a Class E felony, punishable by up to 4 years in prison. So if you steal a catalytic converter in Missouri and get convicted of same once this bill passes, you could spend 4 years in prison for doing that. And it's about time. And I've talked about this before. One of the things that frustrates and annoys me is when people do things that are inefficient. And this is going to sound like a really strange way of saying this. But when somebody breaks into a home and causes thousands of dollars in damage to steal $50 worth of copper pipe, it's inefficient for society because an insurance claim is probably going to get made that pays to fix that. So the insurance company's out, all our rates go up, and some guy made $50. That's actually inefficient. So that's why you have to pass a law to make that not work that way. So we've talked about catalytic converters, copper pipes, and also copper wiring. And believe it or not, there was a similar law passed a few years back regarding precious metals, silver and gold. I know in Michigan, if you go into a coin shop or a place that advertises we buy and sell gold and silver, I'm not sure if there's a floor on it, but I know that if you sell something to them, they will get your name and they'll ask for ID and they'll get a thumbprint on the thing. And they did that because a while back there was a rash of thefts of copper, gold, and silver. And a lot of it was being taken into these kinds of places. Many of them are pawn shops or coin shops. And they would figure this out. So they said, okay, we're going to make you actually show ID and give us a thumbprint when you sell stuff like that. And I don't know if it made a dent or not. I've never spoken to anybody in that industry at that end of the transaction. But I imagine it had to. It had to. Because people do commit crimes of opportunity. And an opportunity means that it's easier to do this than the amount of trouble it's going to take and so on. So they do it. And if you make it more difficult for them to do it, the opportunity seems less. So they'll hopefully not do it so much. So I suspect what's going to happen is that when the new law goes into effect, there's going to be some criminals who didn't get the memo. And they're going to walk in with a shopping cart, which they somehow have, full of copper pipe. And they'll say, yeah, I got all this copper pipe. And the guy's going to go, that's like $60 worth. And the guy will go, okay, how about this? Let's do 30 right now and we'll do 30 in like an hour. The guy goes, that doesn't matter. I got to get your identification from you. It doesn't matter how much it is. And the guy's going to be, what? Since when? What huh? And then they're going to try to figure out other ways around this, like getting other people to turn it in or something. But it's good to close this loophole. It's good to put up barriers to this. And when they catch somebody who's sawed a catalytic converter off of a car, it's good to throw them in prison. Because again, like I said, it's inefficient. When you take your vehicle into a dealership and say someone took a Sawzall, which I know is a brand name, and they took a Sawzall and sawed off my catalytic converter, can you replace it? They're going to say, yeah, but guess what? They didn't do a clean job of sawing it. So we got to replace the pipe in front of the pipe and back of it and the catalytic converter itself. That's going to be expensive. And the amount of money it's going to cost you or your insurance company to do that fix is going to be substantially larger than the small amount of money that the person got when they took it to a scrapyard and sold it. So you've got to end that kind of thievery. You've got to end it. So this is a great way to do it. So Missouri is on the right road. And like I said, this is a scourge across our nation. KJLU Missouri published it. Gloria Enlow wrote it. Donald sent it to me. Thanks a lot. New law takes effect this month, cracking down on copper theft. Questions or comments? Put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. Daddy, what does formatting drive C mean?